Welcome to the next session on the audit course disaster management. Our next session will be based on the cyclone and other coastal disasters, and we will also be discussing about the coastal regulation zone. So, as you all know, the cyclones are the most intense storm which are happening in the earth, and it is a cycle, or it is a system of wind that is rotating counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and around a low pressure center. The rotating air rises and cools, and thereby creating clouds, and which finally will makes the precipitation. The Coriolis force that compels the surface wind to spiral towards the low pressure system, as the Coriolis force is negligible in the equatorial belt between the latitude 5 degrees and north and 5 degrees south. The cyclonic system do not develop in these regions. And a anticyclone is the opposite of the cyclone. It is a system of wind which rotate clockwise in the northern hemisphere and around a center of high pressure. Air comes in from above and sinks into the ground. The high pressure center generally have these fair weather system, and often the terminologies associated with a cyclone can be confusing because people call these dangerous storm by various names on different countries. So in North Atlantic and the Caribbeans, and in the North Pacific, they are known by the name hurricane, and the Northwest Pacific they are known by the typhoons, and in Indian Ocean it is known as simply a tropical cyclone or cyclones. So there are various types of cyclones. The first one is the tropical cyclone. It occurs of the tropical ocean region, and it is of two types: the hurricanes and the typhoons. Hurricanes are found in the Atlantic and the northeastern Pacific, whereas typhoons are found in the northwest Pacific. On the basis of the intensity of the wind speed, the cyclone is classified into five of the category, which range from 1 to 5, and the category 5 has a wind speed of above 155 miles per hour or above. The second type of cyclone is a polar cyclone. It occurs over the polar region of the Greenland, Siberia, and Antarctica. It is strong during the winter seasons. And the third and last one is the mesocyclones. It is a vortex of air within a convective storm. It is the air that rises and rotates around a vertical axis, and usually in the same direction as the low pressure system in a given hemisphere. These types of cyclones are accompanied by rotating air within the thunderstorm. So, how does a cyclone form? They are formed in, as we have discussed earlier, they are formed in a low pressure area. The topography and the intensity, as well as the frequency of cyclone that could strike a coast, decides the vulnerability of that place. The temperature difference between the warm rising and the cooler environment led to the rise of air to become buoyant and then moves upward. Then the high pressure area fills the air in the low pressure area. This cyclone continues as the warm air rises and the low pressure area is filled with cool air. They built up over a period of time, and the warm moist air rises and cools the water in the air and to form clouds. The whole system of clouds and the wind spins, and it grows, fed by the ocean heat and the water evaporating from the ocean surface. When we are explaining, there are 6 factors which are responsible for the formation of a cyclone. The first one is the sufficient warm temperature at the sea surface. The second one is the atmospheric instabilities. The third one is the impact area of Coriolis force, so that the low pressure can be developed. The fourth one is the higher humidity level in the lower to middle levels of the troposphere. And the fifth one is a pre-existing low level focus or a disturbance. And the last one is the low vertical wind shear. There are different cyclones that have affected our country. The case study we are taking here is the cyclone Fanny, which have happened during the May month of 2019. It is the strongest tropical cyclone to strike the Indian state of Odisha since the 1999 Odisha cyclone. And the Fani originated from a tropical depression that was formed in the west of Sumatra in the Indian Ocean on 26th of April 2019. Vertical wind shear at the first hindered the storm's development, but the condition became more and more favorable for Fani around the last week of April or towards the 30th of April. And the Fani and the cyclone Fani rapidly intensified into a extremely severe cyclonic storm and reaches its peak by the May 2nd, and it has a 1 minute sustained wind equivalent to a high-end category 4 major hurricane. And the Fani weakens before making its landfall, and the convective structure rapidly degraded thereafter, degenerating into a remnant low on March 4 and dissipating on the next day. Prior to the Fani's landfall, authorities of India and Bangladesh move at least 1 million people each from the area within the Fani's projected path on the higher ground and into the cyclone. They have been moved into the cyclone shelters, which is thought to have reduced the resultant death toll and the casualties. And the Fani has reported to kill around at least 89 people in the eastern India and Bangladesh and cost around 8.1 billion US dollar in damage in both India and Bangladesh. Particularly, it has got a devastating damage happened in the state of Odisha in India. So cyclone is only one of the disturbances or one of the disasters which is happening in the coast. There are so many. We have seen the tsunamis, then the storm surges. There are so much disturbances and disaster that is happening in the coastal areas, like tsunamis that we have discussed, the storm surges we have discussed in the flood event, and even the cyclones. So we are going to the coastal regulation zone. So the coastal regulation zone is declared by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change under the Environment Protection Act 1986, and it was declared on the year 1991, and it was got updated on 2011 and 18. So the coastal areas of seas, bays, creeks, rivers and backwater which get influenced by the tides up to 500 meters from the high tide line, and the line that is between low tide line and the high tide line has been declared as the coastal regulation zone or CRZ in 1991. While the coastal regulation zones are made by the Union Environment Ministry, implementation is to be ensured by the respective state government through their coastal zone management authorities. So there are a lot of importance and significance for the coastal zone regulations. So it is declared as a protection of the ecologically sensitive areas like mangroves, coral reefs, which act as a shield against the tsunami and the cyclones. And the next importance is by improving the lives of the coastal communities like the fishing community. And the next one is the resilient measure. It is also declared as a resilient measure for mitigating impacts of the climate change and the high intensity cyclones, and it has been declared to balance development with the conservation of the coastal environment. So when it first declared in 1991, it has got a lot of shortcomings, and it has been updated or amended. In amendments were made on the 2011. So the coastal regulation zones which have been passed in 2011 has got certain objectives. The first and foremost objective is to conserve and protect coastal stretches, and the second objective is to ensure livelihood security to the fishing and local community living in the coastal areas, and the last one is to promote development in a sustainable manner based on scientific principles, taking into account of natural hazards and sea level rises. And another amendment has been made on 2018, and the Union Cabinet approved the coastal regulations on notification in 2018. So the land which is associated with the coastal stretches has been classified into zones as per the 2011 classification. There is the CRZ for one zone. It is ecologically sensitive areas like mangroves, coral reefs, biosphere reserves, and etc. So in each zone, there has been a set of rules which has been formulated and which should be followed strictly. And in the coastal regulation zone 1, there is no new construction shall be permitted in except if it is a project related to Department of Atomic Energy or construction of trans harbor ceilings and road without affecting the tidal flow of water between low tide line and high tide line, and between the low tide line and the high tide line in areas which are not ecologically sensitive, the following can be permitted: exploration and extraction of natural gas, construction of basic amenities like school, road, etc. for traditional inhabitants living within the biosphere reserve, salt harvesting by solar evaporation of seawater, desalination plants, storage of non-hazardous cargo such as edible oil, fertilizers within notified ports. So the next zone is the ZRZ zone 2. It, it contains the areas which are developed up to the shoreline and falling within the municipal limits. And it includes the built up area, villages and towns that are already well established. So the buildings are permissible on the landward side of the hazardous line, and other activities such as desalination plant are also permissible. Some constructions are permitted only as per the guidelines specified by the notification. And in the coastal zone 3, it includes the areas that are relatively undisturbed and do not fall under the either in category 1 or 2, and also can include rural and urban areas that are not substantially developed, and it occur between 0 to 200 meters from the high tide line and is a no development zone where no structural construction or no construction shall be permitted. Only certain activities related to agriculture, forestry, projects of Department of Atomic Energy, mining of rare minerals, salt manufacture, and some non-conventional energy sources and certain public facilities may be permitted in the zone. Between 200 to 500 meters of the high tide line, those permitted in the 0 to 200 meters zone, construction of houses for the local community and tourist projects are permissible. And the last zone is the coastal regulation zone 4. The aquatic area, it includes the aquatic area from low tide line up to the territorial limit as classified in the ZRZ4, including the areas of tidal influenced water body. There is no restriction on the traditional fishing undertaken by local communities. No untreated sewage or solid waste shall be let off or dumped in these areas. And also a separate draft of the Island Protection Zone notification has also been issued for the protection of islands of Andaman Nicobar and the Lakshadweep under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. With this, our session on cyclones, the coastal disasters and CR result came to an end. Thank you.